Just before we begin, I'm going to offer a white scarf. It's a very traditional Tibetan way of expressing respect to the teacher, to Padmasambhava. Alas, the greatly precious Guru, the luminous circle of the sun which gave us light has gone. The crystal moon which relieved our suffering has disappeared. The stem of the plant containing the cure for our poisons has gone dry. The Father has withdrawn his all-embracing compassion. The friend who saved us from drowning in the ocean of samsara has taken leave. The flame of the torch that dispelled the night of ignorance has been extinguished. The refuge to whom all our aspirations were directed is no more. Departed is Guru Padmasambhava, the master of all practices. The teacher who showed us the way things are has gone. O Guru Padmasambhava, remembering your deeds, our tears flow without restraint. We cannot breathe, we lose our footing, and we roll on the ground, and we can no longer steady our thoughts. Guru Padmasambhava has gone, and we call with longing in a plaintive voice night and day to the greatly precious Guru. So these are some of the words from a plaintive, longing song sung by Padmasambhava's great woman disciple, Tibetan disciple, Yeshe Tsogyal. And she sang this song after Padmasambhava had departed on a great azure winged horse into the depths of the clear blue sky. Yeshe Tsogyal was left on a mountain pass in Tibet with some fellow disciples and devotees, and this song, her song, expresses their deep sense of loss at the departure of their teacher. We have to imagine this. Imagine what this must have been like. Imagine that you had in your midst a wise and compassionate teacher, someone who gave you the Dharma not simply as a set of ideas and theories, but gave you the Dharma as a living spiritual energy that sparked you off, that inspired you, electrified you. A teacher that gave you effective methods, clear and effective methods that channeled that living energy of the Dharma so that it completely transformed you, transformed every last dark corner of your psyche, transformed your consciousness, transformed your unconscious. Imagine a teacher who came into your land seemingly not just from another country, but from altogether a different dimension, and who brought with him all the mystery and majesty of the unborn, of the deathless. Imagine a teacher whose very presence could draw everybody together to form a spiritual community, and who could work together to build the necessary structures in which the Dharma could flourish. Imagine a teacher who could be as tender as a mother, but whose love, if necessary, could be fierce and direct like a lightning bolt. Imagine a teacher whose instruction could be precise and subtle, cryptic and profound. Imagine a teacher whose very presence would introduce you directly to the way things are, whose very recollection would inspire you, would absorb you. Well, if you had a teacher like that in your land, in your country, in your midst, you would surely feel a deep sense of loss at their departure. I do know, of course, that Buddhism teaches non-attachment and all that. But then, unless you're one with such a teacher, you would really feel their loss. You'd feel it keenly when they left you, as if your very heart was pierced. This is certainly how Yeshe Tsogyal felt, and certainly how the Tibetans generally felt at Padmasambhava's departure after establishing the Dharma in Tibet. Indeed, one modern Buddhist scholar has described Tibetan culture as a culture of longing. A culture of longing. A longing for the presence again of the great teacher, of Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, the greatly precious one. But you may ask, what is the relevance of all that to us here, now, in 21st century Sheffield? What possible relevance could an obscure 8th century teacher in 8th century Tibet have for us? Why do we even celebrate Padmasambhava at all? Why is it one of our main festivals? Who is Padmasambhava, and in what way is he connected to us? Vidanya's already alluded to some of that. First of all, from a strict Western scientific historical point of view, actually we know next to nothing about Padmasambhava. There does appear to have been an Indian teacher who lived in the 8th century who played some part in the introduction of Buddhism into Tibet. But from a strict historical point of view, that's about all we know. Sometime in the 11th century, beginning in the 11th century and the centuries immediately following, something really remarkable happens in Tibet. There began to emerge at that time a very rich literature indeed, containing detailed material about Padmasambhava. Rich and vivid life stories containing an incredibly rich mythology, describing an extraordinary figure, a transcendent figure, a figure who is not in fact defined by the 8th century at all. In fact, he's more than a figure. He seems more like a force, a consciousness, an energy that interacts with the whole flow of Buddhist history, and especially with the introduction of Buddhism into Tibet. And not just its introduction, because what emerges at that time, from about the 11th century onwards, is an intense devotional movement that centres on Padmasambhava. Padmasambhava becomes the centre of meditations, of rituals. He is seen repeatedly in vision and continues to give the liberating Dharma to his disciples. He is a continuous source of inspiration, blessing, teaching, instruction. And it's clear when you look at all this, Padmasambhava has become, as it were, much more than a historical figure. He is, in fact, an archetype, an image, a symbol of enlightenment itself, of the Buddha himself. Padmasambhava's mythology, his many images, point to, evoke the mysteries, the dimensions, the activities of the enlightened state. So with Padmasambhava, we're not dealing with an exotic, colourful Tibetan form. If we just treat the material in that way, we would be guilty of escapism, which wouldn't do in Sheffield. Padmasambhava must be found now. We need to be. We are men and women of this time and this place. And we can find Padmasambhava in our lives now. In one of the life stories of Padmasambhava, we find him saying, "The Guru of times past will not be the Guru of future men and women," making it very clear that Padmasambhava will transform himself according to the needs of people in their time, in their place. Now you can call this talk Searching for the Greatly Precious Guru. That would be its title. Because what I want to do is to suggest where we might look for that greatly precious Guru. Greatly precious Guru is a rendering of the main way by which Tibetans refer to Padmasambhava. That name is Guru Rinpoche. Rinpoche meaning greatly precious, and it indicates something of very great value, of inestimable value, like a rare and highly prized jewel. Rinpoche is a term of very, very great reverence. And guru, of course, means teacher, and the word guru comes from a root meaning weighty or heavy. A teacher is someone who is weighty or heavy with spiritual qualities. That's why they can teach. So Guru Rinpoche means the greatly precious teacher. Padmasambhava then is the archetypal spiritual teacher, the archetypal guru. He embodies, he symbolises the guru, the teacher aspect of enlightenment. Another question, what is a guru? What is a teacher? And what is the teacher aspect, the guru aspect of enlightenment? Many of you will know that in our own spiritual community, our own teacher, Sangharakshita, has in a way de-emphasised the guru, the teacher. In part because the language of the guru has been really very debased and even lampooned, and it can really set up unhelpful attitudes in gurus and in their disciples. Sangharakshita instead has encouraged us to think much more in terms of developing spiritual friendships, of actively cultivating metta, loving kindness for one another in the Sangha, well, to everybody, but in particular in the Sangha, and to form warm and close friendships with one another, friendships with those on a similar level of experience to ourselves, friendships with those more experienced, friendships with those less experienced, without being unhelpfully self-conscious about levels. Simply befriending one another in the context of following the path to enlightenment. But within spiritual friendship of any kind, there will be teaching. There is teaching. There will be learning. There is learning. Within any effective spiritual life, Buddhist life, there must be teaching, and there must be learning. So if there's teaching and learning, there must be a teacher, there must be teachers, and there must be learners. There will be things, people, situations that we learn from. So for the rest of this talk, I will be seeing where we might find the teachers, these manifestations of Guru Rinpoche, of Padmasambhava, the archetypal guru aspect of enlightenment. And there are 5 of them that we need to find. There's actually innumerable teachers, but I've picked 5 for this talk. Next time I do this talk, it'll be another 5 or 10 or whatever, but for this talk it's this 5. So first of all, the teacher of direct vision. Secondly, the teacher of the golden precept. Thirdly, the teacher of profound purity. Fourthly, the teacher of miraculous transformation. And fifthly, the teacher of continuous blessing. So first of all, the teacher of direct vision. This is the teacher who gives us a clear, direct, unmediated vision of enlightenment, of reality itself. The teacher whose very presence sparks something off in us. The teacher who communicates the majesty, the beauty, the energy of enlightenment. The teacher who shows a vision of what is possible for us, clearly, directly. That vision might be evoked through words, through gestures, through symbols. It can come in any way, it can come through any circumstance. But however it comes, you have a sense, even a vivid sense, of enlightenment, of yourself, as it were, at the end of the path, of yourself spiritually reborn. You have a sense of, a vision of you, in other words, as lotus born. Padmasambhava means, of course, lotus born, the one born of the lotus. And the life of Padmasambhava actually begins like this. Padmasambhava, you might be interested to know, was not born of a man and woman. The story goes that the country of Udayana in northwest India was in a very terrible state, a state of drought and famine. Not only that, the king of the land was blind and without a son and heir. So it's an image of spiritual barrenness, of spiritual blindness, and of potencies unable to find expression. And perhaps we felt like that. Perhaps we do feel like this sometimes. Many people do, as if they are blundering around in a wasteland, obscurely aware of powers which they cannot express. And in the myth, in the story of Padmasambhava's birth, it's said that Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva archetype of enlightened compassion, overwhelmed by the terrible state of this country, entreated his teacher, the great red Buddha Amitabha, to do something. And immediately Amitabha sends from his tongue a ray of warm red light into the centre of a mountain lake called Dharmakosha in the land of Udayana. That ray of red light turns into a fully opened red lotus, and then from his heart Amitabha sends a golden Vajra that descends into the lotus, and from this Padmasambhava is born, a fully grown 8-year-old boy child, the colour, the text says, of the purple of seashells. Beautiful, playful creature with a slight frown in the middle of their forehead. And when this prodigy was found, he was asked a number of questions by the people who found him, the people who were representatives of the king of the land. And this is how this child born from the lotus replied, when he was asked about who his parents were and all that sort of thing. My father is the wisdom of spontaneous awareness. My mother is the bliss of reality's vast space. I have no country, having been born in the realm of reality, which has no caste. I nourish myself through eating up the false notion of duality, and I am here to destroy the suffering of all beings. So yeah, the image, it's a wonderful image, isn't it, of a beautiful child. I mean, imagine that, coming across a child talking like that. Well, you can imagine it, actually, because, you know, some children do come out with some real crackers sometimes. But here we have the image of a beautiful child, miraculously sprung from a lotus speaking wisdom, is an image of enlightenment. It's a vision of the purity, the freshness, the spontaneity and directness of the enlightened state of wisdom and compassion. We need such a vision in our lives. We need to be directly in touch with such a vision. It won't be in the precise form of a child sprung from a lotus. It might not even have any particular form. However it comes to us, we need to continuously recollect that vision of possibility and the freshness and creative energy that springs from that vision. So many people lose their way because they forget their vision. They even become sometimes cynical in relation to that vision because they've just ignored it. They just try and pretend it's not there, and even, yes, get cynical about people with vision. It's very tragic. And so, of course, they can't make any real spiritual progress. In fact, they're never going to be really happy. So we must cherish those times, those moments of vision. And they might only be moments. Those moments when the wisdom child shows itself. For those moments of vision are our teachers. They show the way directly. And vision can come at any time. It can come through meditation. It can come through Dharma study. It can come through meeting teachers and spiritual friends. It can come at times when we least expect it. When we're going for a walk, it can come in dreams. It can come at the time of illness. It can come in really difficult times. However the vision comes, however faint the vision, we must cherish those moments. We must live from those moments and for those moments, because they are the teacher of direct vision. They are showing us what is possible, what can open up. Sometimes, to some people, Padmasambhava himself is the teacher of direct vision. Our own teacher, Sangharakshita, well, from the age of 16, he was, I don't think, really ever out of touch with the vision of the truth, the vision of reality, the vision of enlightenment. But he had various other experiences that sort of enhanced that. And he tells a story of when he, in the early 1950s, when he was in the eastern Himalayas, I think in the small town of Goon, just below Kalimpong, he wandered into a temple in the gloom, and there he encountered for the first time a massive image of Padmasambhava just dominating this temple. Padmasambhava in his robes and holding his various symbolic implements, and with that extraordinary expression which is sometimes called a wrathful smile, but even that doesn't really say what it is. And the image deeply impressed him. He said it was strange and mysterious, this image, and yet at the same time utterly familiar. He said it was strange and mysterious, and yet he felt he was recognising something that had always been a part of him and that would never leave him. And later on, a few years later, he received initiation into meditation, centering on Padmasambhava and renamed by one of his Tibetan teachers, Urgyen Sangharakshita. Urgyen being one of Padmasambhava's names, the name of the country from which Padmasambhava comes, Padmasambhava's mythical birthplace. And that encounter is one of the many ways in which over the years Sangharakshita has described his connection with a direct vision of the Dharma. So let's cherish our vision. Never forget our vision. Never part from our vision. The teacher of vision reminds me of a traditional aspirational verse, prayer to the teacher, which goes, "O my own immediate precious teacher, abiding within the lotus of my heart, may you never separate from me, but on the contrary remain inseparable." So we try to be inseparable from the vision, the teacher of direct vision. But vision is not enough. It's wonderful to have what is possible shown to us directly. That will inspire, that will release a stream of creative energy. But then we'll have to practice. We will have to train in order to transform ourselves in the light of that vision. If we don't train, our vision will either fade or it will become something like a kind of badge, a kind of source of attachment and conceit. And when that happens, we lose vision, or vision is destroyed. We destroy it through grasping and clinging. So we need to train. We need a training. We need precepts to train by, which brings me to the second teacher, the teacher of the golden precept. The Sanskrit for training is shiksha. Sikha is the Pali, which is in that in the five precepts, and then as Sikapada, Sikapadam. And shiksha comes from a verbal root meaning to be able, to be capable. To enter the training that leads to total transformation, to spiritual rebirth, to enlightenment, we need to be capable of doing so. Sometimes we can get into moods in which we don't feel capable. We feel that somehow we are uniquely flawed and that it's impossible for us to make meaningful spiritual progress. We're sort of unique among the world's humanity. We are the uniquely flawed one that won't be able to do it. When we're in that mood, we won't be capable. Sometimes people get into moods in which they feel that they need not train because they've already arrived at the goal. They might not be, they might be a bit too clever, to acknowledge that. But certainly they're a long way along and don't really need to learn from anybody else. So both of these moods, either I'm uniquely flawed or, I'm really great and special, these are both expressions of conceit, of arrogance. They represent fixed views of ourselves that make us feel that we are somehow special. We're either the uniquely flawed one or the supremely gifted one. Either way, as Jose Mourinho, the former manager of Chelsea, the present manager of Real Madrid, we feel that we are the special one. That's what Jose Mourinho said of himself. So if these moods take over, either way, well, we will be incapable of training. The teacher of the Golden Precept will always cut through whatever form of conceit we have, whatever tactic, mood or drama that makes us feel special and separate, he or she will cut through it. The teacher is not interested in our games and our moods and our dramas. If necessary, they will be the Vajra Guru. And I said the other night, Sangharakshita says that the Vajra Guru, the adamantine Guru, the thunderbolt Guru, is the no-nonsense Guru, the Guru who means business, who doesn't care what he does to wake us up to our actual reality. Because it's only then, when we wake up to our actual reality, that we can train, that we're capable of training, that we can engage in the training. I can recall a period in my early involvement with Sangharakshita, our teacher, where, basically I was seeking a lot of attention, wanting to be thought of as a special disciple. And whenever I was in that state, he just ignored me. He just sort of looked away, bored. He went completely Teflon, completely non-stick, like a sheer cliff face, just putting out this sort of black, I don't mean negative, but this sort of black energy that I couldn't get any purchase on. And certainly over the years, in my relation with Sangharakshita, I think in a way that's one of the main messages has been you need to look at yourself. I've been consistently thrown back on myself in one way or another. What the teacher wants is that we train ourselves thoroughly in the teaching. In the life of Padmasambhava, there are accounts of him giving detailed instruction on the stages of the path and on the different practices to his disciples. But it's clear that the teachings and the training is specific to the disciples he teaches. It's focused so that they can go deep. So we not only need to find a clear and progressive Dharma training that we can really give ourselves to fully and completely, we also need to make that teaching our own, that training our own. We need to fully internalise it and fully live it. We need to turn, if you like, the general training into our specific training. We need to discover, in other words, the teacher of the Golden Precept. There's a very famous saying by the great Indian teacher who was also instrumental in bringing Buddhism to Tibet, Atisha, which goes like this: the precept of the teacher is more important than the scriptures and their commentaries. The precept of the teacher is the pithy, direct Dharma teaching that goes right to the heart, right to our heart. It's the precious golden precept that shows us right now how to train in the vision. It encapsulates all of the Dharma into a single phrase, or even into one word. That's why it's golden and why it's so very precious. And this golden precept can only be discovered through the intensity of our own training, through the intensity of our engagement with spiritual practice and with our actual spiritual friends. Only then will the teacher of the golden precept manifest. When you look at the life of Padmasambhava, you can see that he was a teacher who gave golden precepts from the heart to the heart, and perhaps especially to his woman disciple Yeshit Sogyal. And she could hear the golden precept because of her single-minded commitment and the intensity of her spiritual practice. So listen now to Guru Rinpoche speaking to Yeshid Sogyal. Sogyal, if people will listen, this is the precept they should practice. Enough with your past struggling with pointless activities. Now accomplish the important task. Enough with your tiresome and hopeless slaving for others' worldly ends. Now accomplish what is of real benefit. Enough with your wasted words and deeds. Now steer your body and voice to the Dharma. Enough with your indifferent complacency. Now bring forth joyous diligence in practice. Enough with submitting to family. Break down the wall of fear. Enough with hatred to enemies. Now train in love and compassion. Enough with being caught in the senses. Now look into the natural awakened mind. Enough with your creation of evil karma. Now give up misdeeds and wrongdoing. Enough with your misery in samsaric existence. Now liberate into the realm of great bliss. Now is the time for unifying faith and diligence and for attaining enlightenment. But for the golden precept to be given and received, for the teacher of the golden precept to be found, we will need to clear away everything that prevents us from seeing the teacher and receiving the precept. We're often too full of ourselves, too bound up with worldly aims and concerns to fully engage with the training. Very often we haven't really decided yet to follow the path. We regard Buddhism as a sort of add-on to our lives, a kind of luxury item that's there to make us feel good, as it were, rather than what the Dharma actually is, as precious and as vital as life itself, as our own breath, as our own heartbeat, as our own eyes. So to really find the teacher and to hear the teacher, we will need to divest ourselves of everything internal and external that is in the way. We'll need to purify ourselves. And it's thirsty work. So now I'm coming to the teacher of profound purity. In the life story of Padmasambhava, we find a long period of intense purification. The story goes that having been found in his lotus, Padmasambhava was adopted as the son and heir of the king of Udayana, Indrabhuti. So he was then groomed to be the next king. But as you can imagine, of one born from a lotus in a mountain lake, Padmasambhava felt very confined in the palace. He felt confined and he got restless and he longed to get away, to get out. It's as if he's some foundling, some child of fairy who longs to return to their natural abode. But it was very difficult to get away. The king created all kinds of obstacles because he loved his adopted son so keenly, so deeply. So as youths sometimes do, Padmasambhava began to misbehave. Imagine a lotus-born adolescent on your hands. Must be pretty weird. So Padmasambhava started to go about in weird gear, you know. They do at that age, don't they? He got rid of his princely garb, and what he took up wearing was sort of scantily clad in animal skins and decked himself in bone ornaments. I bet you're getting a bit worried about your sons, Kathy. But not show them the life of Padmasambhava. He let his hair grow long and unkempt, like dreads. And he took to dancing ecstatically on the roof of the palace. His eyes wild, his scanty clothes falling off. He acted strange, weird and wild, even mad. He went through a period of sort of mad behaviour. And of course, this was deeply shocking to the court. And we really need to appreciate the symbolism here. It's not just the mad behaviour, it's the nakedness and the wearing of ornaments of the dead and animal clothing, these things would have been deeply shocking to the high caste codes of an Indian court. Really very, very shocking indeed. His behaviour became so very bad, I'm not going to go into all the details, that the court insisted that he's either executed or he's sent into exile. Either way, we've got to get him out of here. He's gone nuts, he's bringing us into disrepute, he's got to go. And so they decided to exile him to the great cremation ground called Chili Grove. Chili Grove. Sounds like a sort of far out line on the underground, doesn't it? Chili Grove. One way to Chili Grove. And Padmasambhava stayed in the great cremation ground of Chili Grove for some time, in fact for many years. Padmasambhava went from one great cremation ground to another until he'd stayed in the 8 great cremation grounds of India. And these cremation grounds were very lonely places, far away from the cities and towns. Lonely places where the dead were brought and left to rot, or to be picked apart by vultures and other scavengers, or burned from time to time in great pyres. Judging by Buddhist tantric literature, the cremation ground was an extraordinarily important place for spiritual practice. Places where there would be important encounters with all kinds of beings. A place of vision, a place of teaching, a place of initiation. A place where you would find the teacher in all kinds of forms. This is a really very rich topic. In fact, Sangharakshita has devoted a whole lecture to the symbolism of the cremation ground and the creatures you find in it. What I want to talk about is the cremation ground as the place of purification, where you find the teacher of profound purity. Because the cremation ground is the place where all worldly concerns and ambitions are purified. For traditional caste-bound, Brahmin-dominated Indian society, anything to do with death is ritually and socially and religiously impure. To live in the cremation ground means that you are outcast, you are polluted, you are untouchable, you are no longer a respectable member of society. You're definitely liminal, definitely liminal. And the yogis like Padmasambhava who lived in the cremation ground, were not respectable, were completely dead to the norms of conventional society, would wear barely any clothes, would grow their hair long and matted, and they'd spend their time meditating among the dead. And they lived like that to purify themselves of worldly position, worldly ambition, worldly comfort. They hadn't just gone forth into homelessness, they adopted a life whereby they would be completely rejected by society, where they'd be completely blamed by worldly society. The only thing that matters is the vision, is the training, is spiritual death, and spiritual rebirth, enlightenment, reality. Nothing else matters to these people. Perhaps in a very small way, we touch this ourselves. When we take up the Dharma, when we take it up seriously, sometimes it can happen that close friends might not like that we're taking the Dharma seriously. Family, lovers, partners might not like that we're taking up the Dharma seriously. They might even find it shocking, disturbing. They might even disapprove. They disapprove because something is coming into the relationship that is unknown and unhandleable, that cannot be contained. I remember one wife of a man in our order telling me, some years after the event when things had sort of settled down, but she told me that when her husband began to get deeply involved in the Dharma, she said, it was worse than if he'd got involved with another woman. People might accuse us of being weird, mad, selfish. We may even think that we're somehow wrong and feel like pulling back from the Dharma. But that's not what's happening here. The fact is, we're changing. And because we're changing, we no longer fit in. And this can be very uncomfortable to ourselves and to those close to us. And it's a great test of the depth of our individual involvement with the Dharma. It's also a purification. We're purifying ourselves of wanting to be liked, of wanting to be approved of by the various groups that we belong to and so on. We might even feel during these times that we don't know who we are anymore. All the usual markers of identity seem to be vanishing or seem to have vanished. And it's like that in the cremation ground. The cremation ground is a deeply weird place, where the dead are left and where the ghosts and the ghouls gather, where the gods and spirits gather. It's the place where especially the darkinees gather. And by darkinees here, I don't mean the wisdom darkinees, the beautiful feminine archetypes of the inspiration of enlightenment, but the flesh-eating ogresses. It's very important not to mix up your darkinees. Are they the wisdom darkinees or are they the flesh-eating ogresses? It can really confuse them sometimes. And these darkinees gather around the yogi. So let's imagine them. Let's see how they're described in the life of Padmasambhava. There are to be seen countless darkinees. Some of them have eyes that dart out sun rays. Others give rise to thunderclaps and ride water buffaloes. Others hold sabres and have eyes which inflict harm. Others wear death's heads, one above the other, and ride tigers. Others wear corpses and ride lions. Others eat entrails and ride eagles. Others have flaming lances and ride jackals. Others, five-faced, are steeped in a lake of blood. Others, in their numberless hands, carry many generations of living beings. Others carry in their hands their own heads, which they have severed. Others carry in their hands their own hearts, which they have torn out. There are others who have made gaping wounds in their bodies and who empty out and devour their own intestines and entrails. There are others who hide and yet reveal their male and female sexual organs and who ride horses, bulls and elephants. Just like a class, really, isn't it? So creatures like this would gather around Padmasambhava, and he would sit unconcerned, his skin glowing, his face ecstatic, leaning with his back to a stupa. That's a stupa there, leaning with his back to a stupa. And he would teach them. He would teach these darkinees. He would teach these creatures. He would communicate with them. His being, his fascinating being, would draw these darkinees, these ogresses, to the Dharma. Because Padmasambhava doesn't see all these darkinees as monstrous deviations. He sees all of this as the expression of life itself. Life as it really is. He sees the constant transformation, the continuous metamorphosis of things, the constant play of birth and life and death and birth again. To dwell in the cremation ground means to live in full and vivid awareness of this world of transformations, in all its strangeness. Most of the time we think we have this world sussed, worked out. Well, forget it. It's not like that at all. It's continuous strangeness, weirdness, and transformation. And when you see this world as it really is, as continuous transformation, you discover the darkinees as the teacher. You do discover the wisdom darkinees herself. In one of the great cremation grounds, Padmasambhava goes to a palace called the Castle of the Skull. Because in the centre of that palace is the great teacher, the darkinee, Surya Chandra Siddhi, which means the attainment of the union of the solar and lunar energies, the wisdom and compassion of all the Buddhas. It was hard to get in to the Castle of the Skull. Padmasambhava had to pass many tests and perform many magical feats. But eventually he came before this great red Darkini sitting on her throne, and he requested the teaching, requested the initiation. And the Darkini saw that he was ready. And when she saw that he was ready, she immediately turned him into a syllable. Imagine that. You go for a teaching from somebody and you just get turned into a seed syllable, a mantra syllable. And then she ate the syllable and swallowed the syllable. So Padmasambhava, as the syllable, passed through her, undergoing all kinds of transformation as he passed through her different centres, at last emerging from her secret place, utterly changed, purified, transfigured, spiritually reborn. So the cremation ground is not only the place of profound purification, where we find the teacher who purifies. The cremation ground shows us that living the Dharma life will involve total spiritual transformation, a spiritual death, a spiritual rebirth. We tend to think of Buddhist life as going along, gradually improving, adding a bit to ourselves, a bit of adjustment there, and that we'll eventually arrive at a sort of comfortable place. In fact, we'll even think that Buddhism is about getting more and more comfortable. But the real Dharma life just isn't like that at all. It involves the giving up of absolutely everything. It is actually more like being eaten and swallowed whole, consumed, so that we might re-emerge, single inverted commas, reborn into something rich and strange, but which, paradoxically, is more truly us, because we're living all the time perfectly attuned to the constant death and rebirth, the constant transformation of life. So this brings us to the fourth teacher, the teacher of miraculous transformation. One of the most famous parts of Padmasambhava's life story, as Vidyanya's already mentioned, concerns the introduction of Buddhism into Tibet. So the great king Trisong Detsen was building the great monastery of Samye, a great centre of spiritual training where the Sangha could gather and practice. The builders would build in the day, laying the foundations and erecting the walls. But when they returned the next morning, the walls had been destroyed and all of the materials returned to their original places. This went on for some time, and the king was advised that this was the work of the gods and spirits of the land. They were not happy that the Dharma was entering Tibet. The deep forces of the land, of the Tibetan psychic body, did not want the Dharma in their midst. So the king was advised to invite Padmasambhava to come. Only he could deal with this situation. He was famous throughout India for engaging with such forces, with all this dark, powerful but very rich material. And Padmasambhava was a long time coming after receiving the invitation. He spent months, maybe even a year, in the mountains and valleys of Tibet and around Tibet, calling up, invoking the various gods who attacked him with all their forces, but who he eventually tamed through his overwhelming spiritual majesty. And each god would give him what they call the heart of their life, their heart name. They would give him that, and they vowed to serve the Dharma, to enrich the Dharma, to protect the Dharma rather than to oppose it. That image of Padmasambhava here shows this very thing happening. That's a local god giving the heart of his life to Padmasambhava and vowing to protect the Dharma. Because of these and similar stories, Sangharakshita sees Padmasambhava especially as the Dharma itself, the Buddha himself, in their aspect of transforming the deep, powerful forces of our minds and our worlds so that they enrich our Dharma life rather than oppose it. This is a very big topic, actually, and it's not easy to see how it might work. Let's just have a go at looking at one God that can sometimes turn into a demon. A very powerful God. Let's look at the God desire. We know how powerful desire is and how it manifests in so many ways, as sexual passion, as intense love. And they're all expressions of that deep drive to be, to exist, to live, to experience, that just drives us along, that keeps us going around the wheel of life. Imagine that deep drive, that irresistible drive, that passion, fully harnessed into our spiritual life. Imagine meditating with that intensity, of studying with that passion, of working for the Dharma with such single-minded love. Passion and love and desire are gods and goddesses after all. Imagine too the intensity of pleasure that would come when they are fully engaged and involved in our spiritual life. So Guru Padmasambhava, the teacher of miraculous transformation, symbolises that which transforms such gods and goddesses as these, such desire, such passion. It's not easy to say how this happens. You sort of know it when it does, but it's hard to describe the process. But what we can see in the tradition, the great disciples of Guru Padmasambhava regard him as extraordinarily beautiful, as incredibly handsome, beguiling and fascinating. The Indian princess Mandarava faints when she first sees Padmasambhava. She's so stunned by his beauty. And when she comes to, she praises him as the healing power of love, as the dazzling, joyful epiphany. If we're really to progress along the path, if we're going to be fully transformed, we need to find the form of the Buddha, the teacher, the Guru, who is utterly beautiful to us, who dazzles and fascinates us, who draws forth from us intense love and longing devotion. There's quite a bit of talk in our community at the moment about the theme of the imagination, about imagining and reimagining the Buddha, the importance of the imagination in the Buddhist life. And even people get into asking all sorts of theoretical questions. What is the imagination? How do you do it? And all the rest of it. But the answer really is very simple. We always image our desires. The stronger the desire, the more compelling the image. So find the image, find the images that will take all of your desire and passion for enlightenment. Find your Lord and your Lady, or your Lady, in the most beautiful of forms. Find them in the most compelling of forms and stories and myths. Perhaps when you do this, when you really find these things in the Buddhist tradition or wherever, you'll find beauty everywhere and in everybody rather than in one thing or one person. And then you'll begin to experience the teacher of continuous blessing. So this is the last of the teachers. So not long now before I finish. So the teacher of continuous blessing. Again, this is not something easy to speak of. We all know that Buddhism is a profoundly non-theistic tradition. And it's very important to really wake up to the fact that Buddhism is non-theistic and that we have to take responsibility for our own spiritual development, that we can only rely on ourselves. And also that there's no limit to our development. There's no ceiling on spiritual development. So it's very important to get hold of the fact that Buddhism is non-theistic. But there are times when we wake up and we look around in wonder and we ask ourselves, what have I found? This Dharma, these teachings, this teacher, these spiritual friends, this centre, this life with all its richness. How has this happened? Well, it certainly hasn't happened just because of me. You might even feel that something wonderful is raining down upon you at such moments that enriches you and sustains you, which somehow brings profound, wordless, undefined meaning. You feel it sometimes in spite of yourself, and it moves you to live for the enrichment and uplift of everybody. The followers of Guru Padmasambhava are keenly aware of this. I started this talk by describing the intense feeling of absence and longing felt by Yeshid Sogyal and the other disciples of Guru Rinpoche as he disappeared into the depths of space. But it's said that Padmasambhava will never leave those who long for him. His blessings will always be present, especially in the dark and difficult times, especially when the anxieties of the world press upon us. So just listen to what Guru Padmasambhava says about himself to his disciples before leaving Tibet. Recollect Padmasambhava, embodied in a form of light and not of flesh, and have great confidence, and I shall come, unable to resist. When you make strong and fervent aspirations with devotion to me, Padmasambhava, I will come to you. Again and yet again say this: in joy and sorrow, good times and bad times, in death, in life, in this world and the next, in every circumstance, now until enlightenment, in pleasure or pain, you are my refuge, O Guru Padmasambhava. You who know, I trust in you. With those who have devoted hearts, I stay. From them, I am never separate. So may we all find the precious teacher, the teacher of direct vision, the teacher of the golden precept, the teacher of profound purity, the teacher of miraculous transformation, the teacher of continuous blessing. May we find the greatly precious Guru in whatever form he takes, and in all of our lives, may we never be separated from him. Yeah.